Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome back. This is Cookie here. This is a continuation of what MT you should use, and this is the other half of your deck building adventure. Oh, okay, your other fourth of your deck building adventure. What deployment type or DT you should use. This is a little bit more comprehensive. Once you combine your deployment type, you can roughly figure out what kind of memery you're going to be up to, what kind of deck you're going to build, what kind of basically units you're going to use efficiently and inefficiently, what kind of profile you want to take for a given campaign. This is, again, not as exhaustive. This is more exhaustive than the MTs because there's more choices and there's more things that I know of. But as a rule, these are not just... You check out the stats themselves of the DTs and MTs if you want to actually know what you can probably get up to. But again, that's not absolutely comprehensive, but decently. So your first question is, do you like to gamble? This is two answers. One answer if you're the correct kind of person. If it is yes, oh, dang it, roll for your DT. This is in the description, much like my MT video, or my MT showcase, basically. Well, not really showcase, but my MT flowchart. You can roll for this. You can leave it up to chance. It's for those of you wanting an adventure or wanting to try something different. It's definitely a good avenue of doing things. So it's not actually quote-unquote gambling, not putting anything on the line, except maybe your patience and time, but you can roll for it. If you answered no, lame, I'm joking, I swear. This can divide into roughly 6 sectors. There are 6 rough sectors to a deck. So, well, it gets big, but we will, for the sake of it being big, and for the sake of, is that what she said? It is, for the sake of brevity and time, I'm going to go from the left to the right, and we're going to go decently quickly. Alright, let's get started. Do you like asset spam? This is the asset spamming side of the board. This roughly covers 2 different decks. If so, what kind? Ballistic/cruise missile spam. That's a Savetsky and Perception kind of combo. Perception is a drone-focused and reconnaissance-focused deployment type. It focuses on drones, strike drones, reconnaissance assets, air reconnaissance, that rough thing. Cruise missile spam, for example. And is pretty good with Savetsky, considering they were the main producer of cruise, like actually some pretty fast cruise missiles. They had ECMs too. At least Starburn had the standoff ECM, which was a crazy ECM jammer. It had a 1/3 chance of jamming out recon. So 1/3 chance of jamming out recon, that's a 2 or below on a 1d6 dice roll. And basically you can stealth a cruise missile, and that's basically what that is. And for Savetsky plus Perception, you get a decent discount off, again, CCG/Savetsky cruise missiles. Going towards drone spam can devolve into a couple of different things. If you just like straight up drone spam, just play Perception. That Perception's what you would like typically for that, or for the super drones, stuff like the crazy prototype drones that were ASFs, air superiority fighter drones, straight out of Ace Combat kind of thing. You do Moderna plus Perception, which is the chill 257 military type plus Perception, or Darken, the not chill 257 military type plus Perception. Darken would be better for the super drone portion of that, because the drones get expensive once you go into making them ASFs. They become less drones and more fighters, basically. They become fighters with a spin that they just sit in your drone tab. They do get, again, expensive, so Darken would be more cost efficient for that, but Moderna gives you more flexibility, as with the MTs. And the biggest portion of the answer to what kind is aerial assets. If you like them all, just play Arrow. Just play Arrow. You can roughly play with any kind. For helicopters, for basically those of you that are the air assault enthusiasts that like rotor units, if you do, of course, like helicopters, you play Arrow. What kind of Arrow? Do you like Shinobi or Shalaji? If you have no willpower, it's Shinobi, so you do Moderna or Darken Arrow. If you like Shalaji, you have willpower. Savetsky, arrow. That's a joke, I swear. The whole willpower argument is just basically something ripped from BattleTech when it comes to clans, by the way. Do you need willpower, or does Shinobi do the rest for you? Who needs skill when you got Shinobi, yeah? Do you like... So, before I go on, the last of the aerial assets, please, which does branch off, is... Do you like good planes or bad planes? Aero decks are more for airborne players who like plane spam. If it is... Yeah, you like good planes, there's 3 ways you can do this. You could play Savetsky Arrow, but you do an ASF deck, or a gen deck, basically general air assets, where you play A4M Terrors. You could do a Darken Arrow deck where you do F3s, a bunch of F3s, and both are really good fighters. They're really, really competitive. F3, especially the later model F3s, are very competitive. Or you can do the other expensive route and do an ECM main. My Arrow deck, which I will have a screenshot thrown on in the post-editing section, my Arrow deck is an ECM main deck. I do a Savetsky Arrow deck with Night Slicers and ECM taggers and helicopters, so I have a jammer helicopter in there and an ECM build tagger to basically make it impossible to spot the Night Slicers, so I can use them literally freely. Of course, as an Arrow deck, you sacrifice blue water units, but to me that matters a whole lot less because I'm an air spam kind of guy. I like aircraft in my TNC decks. I still need to make a blue or a littoral deck, but that's roughly how I play. On the other side of the coin of do you like good or bad planes, the bad side, this pretty much all goes into one thing. We're gonna scroll out one: bootleg, utter striker spam, or bomber spam. All of them lead to Savetsky Arrow, but utter striker spam, you're probably better off also taking Amphi Arrow, because if you like straight up striker spam, you would like to go all sides of the striker coin, so both north and south, both 257 and CCG respectively. You were better off, even though Savetsky has tons of cheap strikers, you can still get away with those tons of cheap strikers in Amphi, roughly. Not as much, but again, the flexibility Amphi gives you is the best out of all of the MTs, so you might as well. As for bombers, I can't tell you how many bombers Savetsky has, they're crazy. Continuing on from Arrow, we go into do you like it normal? So this is one of the most straightforward branches out here. Yes, then you do a standard DT. There is the basic standard DT that was used roughly as a unit list for most of the campaigns. As it expanded, of course, changed, but standard it's basically they taking Amphi as an MT. You have the best of all worlds. You get the best of quote-unquote all worlds. You're jack of all trades. You don't have any particular area really, really well, and you're punished for dabbling too much in certain areas. I'm pretty sure that's how it is still, though I may have changed it because standard is like gen decks and Eugen games. It's there, you can get everything, but nothing super specialized, and you can't dabble so much in a tab. And that is most of standard. That's basically, do you like it normal? Then just do standard the normal way. It's as simple as that. Moving swiftly from that, we have, of course, do you like small vessels? This is the polar opposite to large vessels. If it is no, not really, you like DLs, DDEs, and super frigates, which is the in-between of small vessels and large vessels, or yes, you do. Alright, now what kind? If it's all of them, you play Littoral, which is the specific DT for small vessels, or you can play standard DT, which is capable of using Littoral like blue water. Its standard DT is, of course, used roughly by everything, and you can use all of Littoral for that. If you like specific stuffs like PGMs, MTBs, mine layers and mine clearers, hydrofoils, all kinds of torpedo boats and patrol boats, you can do basically everything plus Littoral. You can't dabble too much in specifics within Littoral. It's as Littoral you get all the benefits ever, when it comes to small vessels. So it's just how you play the small vessels. So in this case, if you like this stuff, you can do a littoral deck, this stuff being PGMs and stuff like, and similar units. You can do a Moderna, Amphi, or Sovietsky littoral deck and just focus with PGMs. If you like frigates and corvettes, well, there's a couple of different specializations of frigates. If you like the legends, you can do Merca Spam or the Merca SAS Stealth Armor Systems APOC, which is Sovietsky plus Littoral. The Merca is pretty famous for getting something like 5 kills or 4 kills and serving in 3 different campaigns, not sinking until the last one. That is kind of what Merca is known. That's what the Merca SAS is known for. Mercas in general are really cheap. Otherwise, you can do cheap frigate spam, which is a Sovietsky Littoral or Tartal Littoral, because Talau during the Dark Age was a frigate-based navy. So Tartal gets a lot of benefits for that. You can do it with Tehran. Like, the Tehranian part is just destroyers, which kind of benefits you, but at the same time, it doesn't matter. And Sovietsky is in general known for its frigate use. It uses a lot of frigates. Corvettes are rare. And then there's the specialized class of frigates in general, which is specialized ASW frigates, asymmetry warfare frigates, so Moderna littoral DTs or standard DTs or even deep DTs. Deep is the famous ASW and submarine DT that can separate into just straight ASW if you want to do it that way, or I'll talk about that later. But also super frigates, so that's mostly a Sovietsky thing. I'll tell you about super frigates soon, but the specialized stuff is you can make specialized decks for ASW or asymmetric stuff. So DD, like FFGs, which are frigate guided missile. Fleet frigate guided missile or frigate guided missile frigates, essentially. Those are more, that fits into the whole, like, almost ASW/special frigate metric that has roughly developed over the last 2 TNCs, which is super beneficial for those of you who like the specialized kind, which Littoral is better for it, but you can run it in standard or deep, which roughly covers that. Moving on to large vessels, the other side of the coin. Do you like large vessels? It goes the same way. Yes, no, not really. No, not really. Again, leads to DLs and super frigates and DDEs. I should probably talk about this real quick, which does lead on to this special stuff. DLs, or destroyer leaders, and super frigates are the blurring of the classifications between frigate and DD, or, well, respectively, DD and cruiser, light cruiser, and frigate and destroyer. Super frigates are more like CCG creation. They're frigate leaders, and they lead flotillas of frigates. They're cheating the line between a frigate and a destroyer, in that it takes a frigate slot, and it's a big frigate, but it doesn't quite have the firepower of a destroyer. That's basically it. And they're really specialized. They have low availabilities. They're rare. You don't find them a lot. And the same thing goes with DLs. Unless you're TNC 5 level, like TNC 5 level 257 Industries, you're not running a lot of DLs. DLs are rare. They're specialized for certain roles. They're just big destroyers that fight almost like light cruisers. And then you also have DDEs, which are destroyer escorts, or DEs. They've been stated as kind of both. Those are specialized destroyers that are more AA focused or more escort focused, quote unquote, like ASW destroyer, which has its own classification. But a DDE is more kind of like a super frigate, except it's destroyer sized or slightly smaller, but bigger than a standard fleet frigate. But you use it for hyper specific roles. So DDEs like the Smolensk V2s, which I'll throw a picture on screen, were like a series of prototyped destroyers and service destroyers that used a ton of AA guns, basically, which is not super. It's a picket defense destroyer. It's a DDE. It's an escort for a larger flotilla or a larger fleet or task force. Again, super specific rules. That's why the no, not really. You don't like small vessels, no, not really, or you really don't like large vessels. This is the really, really awkward in between that blurs the lines. It's similar to a super cruiser. It really blurs lines. And they're a classification that probably never needed to happen, but did. So that's what that basically means. On the other hand of the coin, you say yes, and it splits into so many kinds. It splits into roughly 4 kinds. And you get like okay, I just lost my train of thought. You have destroyers, cruisers, super cruisers, and battleships / battle cruisers, BBs and CCs. For destroyers, you split into DDs are a class aren't as DT restricted, and that's a big asterisk. Same with cruisers sometimes. They are a wider range of classes, which is the caveat. You have stuff like DDEs and DEs, which are more Savetsky blue being the predominant heavy warship doctrine or deployment type. You have Savetsky standard, again, not as DT restricted. You can use them in standard littoral or AA destroyers and stuff like that, which also goes into the weird line of DLs, super frigates, DDEs, all that similar stuff that blurs classifications. Where am I? Okay. There can also be a lot of specialized destroyers, which goes in the DDKs are in ASW. They're ASW hunter-killer destroyers. They specifically hunt submarines. And there was one DDK that was at least made in TNC 5, Schmaland. She had a ton of ASW. A ton. They are very ASW focused. They can go in any deployment type, but they're more focused in deep deployment types. Because deep has a 50% discount on all ASW munitions, they're a lot cheaper to outfit in an actual deep deployment type than they are in a standard one. Another specialized things are DDGs. They're mostly a TNC 6 exclusive, and they're mostly a Moderna or Darkin kind of tool. You can use Amphi and use them and CCG assets. They are really good in blue, like if you use a blue deployment type, not because missiles get any discount in them, it's because they're expensive because they use missiles. Guided missiles are really gimmicky in the sense that you can usually have 1 or even 2 on a warship, and then very little actual room for defense, armor, propulsion, any kind of maneuverability, any kind of actual like anti-air or anti-ship warfare kind of thing, or anti-surface warfare. So your missile's what you're made for, and they're kind of quote unquote a one-trick pony. They're exclusive to TNC 6. They are very rare, they are expensive, and because they're expensive, you should use them in blue more than standard. Savetsky also has guided missiles. Throwing them on a warship is a little bit cursed. TNC 4 warships especially, here's the thing, TNC 4 warships have so much extra deck space in the Savetsky arsenal that you might as well throw a missile on one of them, so keep that in mind. It's a little ridiculous. But DDGs are really, they're odd. They're not be-all, end-alls. They're not VLS monsters. They're one-trick ponies. And if you can shoot down a missile from a DDG, well, you're probably absolutely fine. So keep that in mind. Another type of specialized DDs, and I'm taking a long time ranting about this, but is gunboat-type DDs. So any destroyer that you build with a lot of guns and no torpedoes, no ASW, that's mostly a gunboat destroyer. You have the biggest examples of which are the Kotland class, Kotland and Utiloy. It might be a Utiloy class. I couldn't remember for the life of me. It's in my fleet, leave me alone. And stuff that's meant to overwhelm ships with just straight firepower and lead and high explosives. You're not as accurate with these warships, and there's very few true gunboat DDs. Like four barrel gun DDs are the kind of things you see. that are gunboats. It's not DT specific like DDK or, well, like standard DDs or maybe DDEs, but they're again, they're anti-surface focused. So as soon as an aircraft comes hunting for you, or a helicopter, God forbid a helicopter, you're done. You're usually done. AA is key against air assets. ASW is key against submarine assets, and it lacks both of those. The last part about the DDs is destroyer spam. And if you run destroyer spam, there is really one way you do it, and you run blue as a deployment type. Blue and DD spam go really, really well because destroyers are, again, cheaper than cruisers, as you'd expect, but the spam you can get with blue and straight DDs is a little insane, especially post Dark Age, because Tartal has some of the best. Tartal or Karvik has some really good destroyers, and they're cheaper because it's Dark Age. And the fleet destroyers in both, well, some of them are really good, some of them are trash, but you can spam a ton of them, and that means a lot of torpedo tubes, that means a lot of guns, that means a lot of AA potential if you outfit them customly. Spamming any class isn't super strong, but destroyers are pretty flexible, so you can, and they're fairly maneuverable across the board. Even most DDs are pretty quick. Only certain DEs go sub 30 knots, and I've been the one that made those, so like the CCG side of things, it is a valid strategy to run blue and something like Savetsky or Moderna and just a ton of destroyers. It is a worthy option. And that rounds out destroyers. Now to cruisers. I know I'm taking a lot of time and this is going to be a long video, but you have multiple different avenues of cruisers. You have light cruisers, which are light cruisers are bigger, of course, than like a destroyer, leader, or a destroyer, but they're small, they're light, they can have as much firepower as a heavy cruiser or even less, but have far less armor. A light cruiser is a lighter version of a heavy cruiser. Most people know that, but in TNC, again, it's harder to define things. Certain light cruisers are really just oversized DDs. Certain light cruisers are definitely light cruisers. The Pobeda class and their offshoots, the 93/68 cruisers that were made in the Dark Age, are definitely light cruisers. You can run blue or standard for them. Blue is, again, once you get into the cruiser level thing, very good for cruisers, but light cruisers are because they're smaller, they're far more flexible than in a budget than a heavy cruiser. So Savetsky blue, Savetsky standard, Amphi standard, those are good options for it. Or you can run Tartal. If you really want to run Tartal light cruisers, you can run Tartal in there, or as a military type. Or you can run Karvik, which is great as a military type for light cruisers. And you should run Karvik blue if you're going to do it. Blue being the deployment type. Next, you have heavy cruisers, the other option. You play anything as a mainstay. It's easy to get your hands on. You're not MT specific when it comes to heavy cruisers. Everybody ran them. Realistically, almost everybody ran them. And blue is really good for them. It is very beneficial to run blue, or you can run standard. They're not as flexible as I said earlier with CLs or light cruisers, but it is a very simple category. Heavy cruisers are the dumb simplest category to go down, which is beneficial. I'm not calling you stupid for going down it. It's very easy to pick up. With the other option, you have the weirdo stuff. Aviation cruisers are a TNC 6 thing, and it's where you take an aircraft carrying cruiser, and it's basically an aircraft carrier with an aircraft that you can reload. It's basically a manned bomb or a torpedo in some cases, or it's an actual aircraft. Aviation cruisers are TNC 6 or 8 as of right now, and they're only 8 because a single carrier was made in TNC 8. and it's under Tartal, so the only way you can efficiently play it is Tartal, and the DT really doesn't matter. But if you're doing it, if you're going to do an aviation cruiser, I really do stress stop, evaluate what you want out of an aircraft, and if you really like aircraft, go play Aero, don't even bother. What is wrong with you? Or if you really like the idea of an aviation cruiser because you're a weirdo, and it's okay to be a weirdo, maybe you can play Blue or Standard. It's, again, by the cruiser level, it is preferred you play Blue. And you do Moderna or Darkin. Sovietsky, there is one prototype aviation cruiser. There is much more availability when it comes to Moderna or Darkin, because 257 Industries did that. They did the weirdo aviation cruiser thing. And it's a legitimate option, but if you really want aircraft, go play Aero. And if you don't, I don't know, play a DDG. I don't know what's wrong with you. I'm not judging you if you want to do it, but I don't know what's up with you. Next up is the two big classes that spin together. Supercruisers, which are CBs, or battleships and battle cruisers, which are BBs and CCs respectively. DT really matters here. If you're going to run a big ship like a supercruiser or a battle cruiser or a battleship, you run Blue. It's too expensive, and you typically run them in the highest budget settings, like you're running 7 million or 8 million or 10 million or 10, not million, billion, or even 5 billion. I've pretty sure I've been up to a build that does 5 billion with a supercruiser in it. The reason why you do it in the bigger end, because supercruisers go for $1 billion and battleships go for nearly 2 billion. It take a significant, like a low scale conflict, which is 3 billion as a budget. That's most of your budget in one ship. So, like, keep in mind, that's a bad financial choice. Only one side really did the CB thing. So you run Blue or Sovietsky Blue. No options. Because the discount really matters. Sovietsky Blue, you get something like, what is it, minus 35% maybe on a Hinchikaze or an Atago or a Shokai class supercruiser, which are really, really good cruisers. They're really good at destroying ships from halfway across the map. Wham! Sovietsky was the only one that really did supercruisers. There was one supercruiser made by 257 Industries. It sank to Hinchikaze. Nothing else. We do the best. If you're running a lot of battleships or battlecruisers, which it's really hard to do, you run Blue. You don't get much option. This side is super simple. Your DT is going to be Blue. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. The second to last sector is phased. So if you played Steel Division 2 or Steel Division Normandy 44, the incomes are phased based on what time in the match it is. There is phased income deployment types in TNC's budget system. You have Balanced, or you have Maverick, playing exactly off SD2. And you play for a certain amount of matches with the certain units in your deck, and then the next set in the next units in your deck, and then because it locks after the phase, and then the last phase you do 3 phases, and the last phase it's the rest of the units. If it's absolutely, you love this, you like being limited by the units in a phase, you like having certain things in the beginning and using other stuff by the end, do you like a heavy start or a phased build? Heavy being your phase A and B are really heavy on units, and a phased build being it gradually gets heavier as time goes on, from A starting with the least to B with a good amount more and C with the most. If it's heavy, you play Maverick. If it's phased, you play Balanced. It's relatively simple. I will throw a couple pictures of what they look like in the post-editing. They are very quirky, but they can be fun, and they can be nice and challenging if you're up for it. And last, but not, least, is, do you like submarines? There's 2 ways you can play this. Yes, I love submarines. Tartal Deep, Amphi Deep. Or you can do, I'll talk about it here in a second. Tehran in the Dark Age made a crap ton of submarines, which is where Tartal Deep comes from, or Amphi Deep, so you can get the best of both worlds. Also, you have a willpower check. If you fail it, you go Dark and Deep, so you do a whole bunch of broken submarines, are really nice and quirky. Or you pass the willpower check and go for a challenge. You play Sovietsky Deep. If you absolutely detest the idea of submarines, any military type and Deep, because of that aforementioned 50% discount on ASW when it comes to the Deep deployment type. Also, exclusive to Deep is Maritime Patrol Aircraft spam. They are the only category that gets a good discount on MPAs. So you can do aircraft spam in a Deep deck, and it can be ASW aircraft. It is relatively disgusting. If you hate submarines and you're going to make a deck that hates them, run Deep. They get a discount on torpedoes, they get a discount on ASW, and because they get a discount on torpedoes, you might as well run torpedo destroyers with them, right? It's a little bit specialized. And that concludes what deployment type you should use. It's not super exhaustive, like I said at the beginning of this, and I had to stop and record this a couple of times. Give me a break. And basically, this is me yapping forever, but this is the rough primer on what deployment type you should use. I'll link the MT one in the description. I hope this went off in the background or whatever, and you enjoyed listening to this. If you did, I hope you enjoy more of my content. If you didn't, I hope you don't enjoy more of my content. I won't change your opinion. I'm not here to. I'm here to inform you and entertain you. Whether you like it or not is up to you. Hey man, you're a human being. Enjoy what you enjoy. Other than that, catch me some other time. I'll be doing some more TNC content hopefully soon. Maybe showcasing something. Maybe arguing about something. You never know. I'm doing stuff, alright? Upload schedule, what's that? Enjoy. Have a good one. This was Cookie.